Welcome back to Sex and Space, where we explore sex across all of its infinite dimensions. Today we're bringing you an awesome chat that I had with the brilliant Dr. Evan Goldstein, a renowned anal surgeon, founder of Bespoke Surgical, and the author of the amazing book, But Seriously. Real quick reminder to check out sexandspace.com/books and our latest release, How to Talk with Your Kids About Porn. It's been called the most comprehensive and accessible book based in science on porn out there. You can also support us by subscribing, smacking that little like button, visiting our merch store at sexandspace.com/shop, and following us on Instagram and TikTok at sexandspace.com. That's all one word, Sexandspace, DOTCOM. Every like, share, and subscription helps us to continue to do what we do. Now, let's drop into my interview with Dr. Evan Goldstein. Evan is a renowned anal surgeon and the founder and CEO of Bespoke Surgical, leading private practice specialising in elite sexual health and wellness care in New York City. Dr. Goldstein's practice primarily serves the LGBTQ+ community, providing exceptional care and breaking down stigmas associated with anal health. We talk about all that and his new book, But Seriously, the definitive guide to anal health, pleasure, and everything in between. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome, Dr. Evan Goldstein. Welcome to Sex and Space. Just a bit of background on how we got to connecting with you. I was reading this Guardian article about pooping, and it got me, with its, I guess, clickbaity title. I was like, this will be a fun little ride. But there's a brilliant line in there which really spoke to me, that no one feels happy, healthy, or beautiful if their ass isn't happy, healthy, or beautiful. And I was just like, right on, man. It really spoke to me, not just about, the pooping side of things, but then when it led on to me reading your book, the definitive guide to anal health and pleasure and everything in between. I'm a straight dude in my 40s. I happen to have a podcast about sex, but the book did a great job for me of challenging, I think, unacknowledged or unaddressed biases that even I hadn't considered that I might have around the subject, which I thought which is great, and that's a very humbling thing, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the outlier in that. And so, thanks very much. Recommend the book massively to anybody. Really, really insightful. Let's talk about butts and anal and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that was the purpose of the book. It's titled But Seriously, to kind of cheek and tongue the situation. But,
Yeah.
If you're talking about stigmas and biases, especially on the straight world, it's, if I engage in anal play, I must be gay, or I must be on a spectrum.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, you have to take a step away from the societal issues, right? Wherever we are in the countries, whatever religion, whatever backgrounds, whatever upbringing, and start to just think about sex as pleasure. How do you seek pleasure from certain acts? And again, there's lots of stigma as it relates to anal. Is it dirty? Am I going to poop on people? Is it, am I gay and homosexual if I'm engaging in these acts? And there's so many barriers, even our own internalized, right? Which is limiting people's sexual game. And it shouldn't be. I get it. But I think that that's the moral of where we are, where we're trying to look at what I do. What I do on a surgical perspective is I help people with their sexual desires. I help them get to the anal anatomy and getting it to function correctly. And the book really goes over all the myths, the taboos, to try to allow people to start kind of thinking differently about their sexual world. And then also, like, how do you hold your practitioners accountable? How do you start making sure that people, even if it's not gay sex or anal sex, just talking about, like, how are your erections? Are you able to get off? Do you get off too quickly? How do you start to become comfortable with discussing sexual topics that then allows you to start honing in on, hey, yeah, this does sound fun. Or, yes, one of my partners does want to engage in anal play. How do I become a good top or someone
Mm.
that is giving to now know the anatomy and the right ways to engage anally? So it's a lot of cool topics, fun topics, trending topics,
Yeah.
anti-topics, you know.
No, I think it's good, and I mean the I suppose even the anatomy stuff, that's such an important factor. I mean, I don't know what your personal sex education was like,
It
but
was terrible.
yeah, everyone says the same thing. Everyone's just like, this is awful. So this book does a great job of giving you the information that you actually need, because no one else is going to give it to you. And if you just crash into it, you know, almost by accident, as the book outlines, you can cause yourself some harm. There's, you need to be education is knowledge is power, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And especially, a lot of it is, it's kind of interesting when you start to see the two camps of people talking about the book. It's either how do you poop correctly, how do you wipe, and how do you keep the daily hygiene?
Yeah.
And then it's like, all right, yeah, we get all that stuff, but how do we actually use it from an anal perspective, right?
Yeah.
From a sexual goal.
Yeah.
So I think, the book, what we do is you first need to understand your own anatomy, and whether
Mm.
it's just for pooping, whether it's for pooping or pleasure, the concepts are all about the same.
Yeah.
It's all about pressure. There's two components in everybody's ass. It's muscle and
Hmm.
it's skin. And there's three sets of muscles in everybody's ass, two that you would contract. So all the people that are listening right now, squeeze your asshole in the car, wherever you are at work. And what you'll see is that you're squeezing two out of the three.
Hmm.
Those two are considered voluntary, but the third one, which is up higher, is involuntary. That's the one, if you try to have anal sex and you're like, hey, I feel like I'm relaxed, but I still can't get the toy, the penis, whatever inside. It's that third one that is restricting.
Right.
Now,
Right.
same thing from a bowel perspective. If you're trying to go to the bathroom and you're pushing a lot, that third muscle is quite tight in many people or isn't relaxing. And so the concept is, how do I make sure my stool is soft enough? How do I make sure that I'm breathing? How do I make sure I control all of these muscles to actually create an appropriate bowel movement? And
Mm.
then obviously that translates on a sexual perspective. You can think about how much more pressure is involved in sex. So, can the muscle withstand that pressure? Can it relax? Can the skin open and accommodate without tearing? It's all about pressure management.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the book goes over to be like, okay, don't sit too long on the bowl. Don't push too much. No Instagram, Facebook, nothing like that. Shit or get off the pot.
Yeah, man.
All of these things that no one ever talks about. Less wiping, using bidets are really good for you. No wet wipes. They're terrible for the environment. They're terrible for your hole. Like things that you would think like every parent should teach their child, or that every school should just talk about the basics of like hygiene and appropriateness for an
Yeah.
area that needs to be tended to. Nobody talks
No
about.
one talks about it.
It's
No.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Oh, even the stuff, even the basics that you do cover in the book, I think some of those are like news to people. I mean,
Totally.
it's almost laughed about, the taking your toilet, taking your phone to the toilet, or especially as
Right.
a parent, you're just like, this is my 10 minutes of peace and quiet. But even the wiping. And the wet wipes thing. I mean, I think I've seen a bit of a surge in wet
Oh,
wipes and
huge.
other
It's a huge
products.
industry. It's a
Yeah.
huge industry. And, the reality is that I don't know what it is. Is it the actual fabric? Is it the liquid, even if it says it's organic and amazing? Or
Mm.
is it just moisture in that space? But specifically in the communities that I serve, you start to see outbreaks in many things. Warts,
Right.
HPV develops warts, that you can see herpes outbreaks. We lick, we suck, we play. the reality is many people have HPV and herpes,
Yeah.
even not the genital type of herpes. But the reality is that with wet wipes, it changes the microbiome in the
Mm.
space. So the excess moisture, the irritation, all of a sudden you start seeing people with rashes and irritation and these small little tears. Every single patient that comes to my office, the second question I ask is, are you using wet wipes? And so many people are, and the
Mm.
industry is making billions of dollars,
Yeah.
yet at what cost to the environment and the environmental people that live in the environment? It's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah. No, it is. I've seen the other thing is sprays for paper,
Totally.
right? Yeah.
Totally.
Same
Yes.
idea. Yeah.
Same concept. I mean, I think, look, there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria, but the body's really smart. The skin is really durable. It's
Mm.
in equilibrium. When you start mucking with that, when you start altering that,
Mm.
now you start to see other components. And it's not only anally, a lot of women vaginally, obviously with us with testicles and penis went during the winter or the summer months when it's like super sweaty and irritated, you can start to see how that equilibrium changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and also a lot of people don't shower at night. I don't know, is it common over there that people shower at night before you go to bed?
I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, never really thought about it. We chuck the kids in the bath in the evening, and that's that's the
Right,
norm.
and
But
that's the way that most people should do it because we sweat, we poop,
mm,
we wipe, we are in the gym, we're in a lot of grime all day. And do you know how many people? So many people don't shower at night.
mm,
And so what happens is that you're dirty, you get into your bed where there's no good circulation of air, and now it festers into a lot of issues. So a lot of stuff with the book is just educating. And you don't have
mm,
to take all the different components, but just making you think of what I see in the office. And when you see 90 people a week for 15 years, you start to see the same silly, silly mistakes that none of us would know are silly because nobody talks about it.
yeah, 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 absolutely. So, 15 years ago, you weren't doing this. How did you get into butt health?
Yeah, I guess I really like ass. It must
Yeah,
be.
yeah,
I don't know. I think it was a lot of different forces. I was actually training to be a heart surgeon, believe it or not, at the
okay,
time.
yeah,
But I was in a very kind of homophobic, a lot of it was internalized homophobia. But, being a surgeon, being a guy, it's total bro.
yeah,
And then I started to realize, wait a second. One, I just didn't feel like I wanted to be in this space. I didn't feel like I wanted to continue training for so many years.
mm,
And I started to be like, well, look, who am I? What am I? I came out, I met my current partner. We're together for 18 years. We have two kids together, age 12. Um, and I started to really look at myself and being like, wait a second, I should be proud of who I am. I should be out. And what can I do within the community? To support it. And
mm,
obviously, it first started in the gay community, but then has expanded to anyone anally, right,
mm,
that's engaging. But I had my own issues in medical school and, with my ass itself, where you start to kind of be like, well, wait a second. Like, why aren't people talking about this? And why aren't there surgical approaches to tackle it? And when you start to tackle community based medicine, you start to see where the faults are, faults within each of us, faults within the system, the
mm,
medical system, the educational system, the governmental system. And so all of a sudden it starts taking on a life of its own where you're saying, okay, I'm providing care to a community, no judgment, no taboo, people that don't have access to this type of care. And I see
mm,
tons of people from New Zealand, Australia, so many places because the sexual aspect, the shitting aspect, like we said, if there is a discrepancy and you are someone that loves to engage anally and now you can't, it is catastrophic to you, relationships, to life.
mm,
So the reality is that there should be access to this. And so it was so instrumental in me starting this, then understanding how, because it's not a surgical field that people are taught.
yeah,
It's you have to teach yourself how do things heal, what's the right way, how do we get it to sustain those pressures we're talking about. So you start to develop programs and protocols and understanding the concepts. And then the one flaw was that people were talking about sex. And the reality is when I started this 15 years ago, they weren't.
Mm.
And so even doctors weren't talking about sex. We did a huge study that showed that even gay physicians taking care of gay clients or patients, 92% did not ask sexual questions. So
Right.
now you start to say, holy shit, if doctors aren't feeling comfortable talking, how are people going to find this type of care? So I hired a publicist and a PR team. I said, let's talk about it. Let's blog about it. Let's podcast about it. And now what's great is you start to see like the popular press has just accelerated in sexual discussions, not only anally, that has spearheaded this kind of mission for it. I started a company called Future Method. It's all about positive practices in the product space.
Yep.
Douches, fiber, supplements, pre and probiotic, all that stuff, because I want to bring risk down with sex. So if you're not using condoms, okay, should you be? Yeah, okay, but that's not life. Many people don't. And so what else are we doing to mitigate risk? What else are we doing to make sex accessible, appropriate, and also try to teach everybody about it, whether you're a parent, whether you are engaging, whether your friends are engaging. There's so many facets in the book that hits all types of sexual beings that it's like a game changer, and just the progress of what we're making over the last 15 years. It's super positive.
Yeah. No, I think it's amazing. I think that what the book does is it gives people a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, because I find that the prevalence of the conversation around sex and anal sex in culture, porn, the prevalence of it across all types of relationships. It's in music videos, it's in TV series, Netflix. It's kind of everywhere, but without the knowledge, right, that goes with it. I was going to ask about actually the knock-on effects of the fact that it is more mainstream, and in terms of what you see in the clinic. Are people coming in? Maybe there's injuries, but I was going to ask a little bit about shame, I guess, and things like appearance, and that juxtaposition between feeling sexy and the realities of your body, and so whether that's cosmetic or from a health perspective. I mean, they're kind of like hand in hand, right? But has culture had an effect on the sort of stuff that you're seeing come to the clinic?
Totally. I think it allows for people to have access to the understanding that solutions are now available, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at like a lot of like whether it's Lil Nas X or Troye Sivan or a lot of these people that are pushing the narratives of anal into culture, whether it's gay sex, whether it's anal sex. The problem that we see is that there are sex therapists, there are therapists, there's doctors, and so many of people have amazing wisdom, but it's not cohesive. There's
Yeah.
not a curriculum. People don't have like a set standard, whether it's governmental oversight to say, okay, this is how we're approaching anal sex. Because what I see is that people think that you can just shove it in.
Yeah.
People think that bleeding and pain is normal for anal, right? People look at porn and look at all of these people and Reddit and all the threads that are out there, and there's no oversight to actually say, is it credible? Is it viable? Is it scientific? And is this the right way to approach anal? That was why, but seriously to me, was like, I had to do it, because having the 15 years of the knowledge of it was like, okay, let's just start the bar to say that this is standard management for people to understand. Skin, muscle. And I say to myself, like, anal is 60% functional, meaning what's there, whether it's muscle, skin, whether it's extra skin in that space, whether it's a cosmetic approach, whatever that is, right? That's one. The other is 40% mental. How do you, not only mental, more of like mental capacity, but the connection from the brain to the ass. There are many people that think they're relaxing, but they're actually contracting. It's called paradoxical motion. Same thing. Some people feel as if they're contracting, but they're relaxing. But the neural connection can actually be changed if you start to kind of work it. I tell people, think about your first time ever getting a foot massage. If you're ticklish, you are like, holy shit. But
Yeah.
if every week or every month you're going for a foot massage, over time, the ticklish part goes away. And it's the same concept of you being able to control your body. And so with that being said, it's understanding that. Now, look, there are many people that have cosmetic issues and they don't even want to engage anally. But I see post-pregnancy women. I see many people, guys that have skin tags that just don't feel sexy. If someone's going down on me, if I'm going down on someone, and if I'm engaging vaginally and yet someone has an extra piece of skin anally, it can fuck with people.
Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't, it's not like I'm trying to incite, oh, your ass needs to look like this, and this. It's how do you feel? Sometimes wearing your G-string or an underwear irritates your ass. Well, why is that? Is there extra skin? Is there a hemorrhoid? What are the certain things that we can do? That area is where the sun doesn't shine. A lot of people have discoloration when they're finally having sex and it's bright lights out and it looks beautiful. You know, I say,
Yeah.
well, it screws with people. So wait a second. Do we just say forget it? Or do we say, okay, like if you're someone that it aggravates or irritates, these are the solutions that we can do to take care of it. And why
Yeah.
not?
Why not? That's it, right? Yeah. Is that's the thing. I think that I've heard a lot, about like, oh no, it's terrible. Porn is, putting unrealistic expectations on people, and there's beauty standards and all the rest of it. But it does really, for me, dovetail in, bodily autonomy, right? People can do what they want, and also, the feeling sexy. Like you're absolutely right. Like you can tell yourself to the blue in the face, that it's fine, and I don't need to worry about how it looks down there. But if like you said, if the lights go on and there's the little worm that's contributing the little seed of doubt, like, yeah, why not address that? Why not
And I say that all the time. I say, it's interesting. I had two clients, one with a huge skin tag anally, enormous, probably one
Yeah.
of the biggest skin tags I've ever seen. And I said, okay, let's talk about removal. And he's like, no, 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 no. My partner would kill me if I remove that because he loves playing with it. And we all get off so much from that
Yeah.
versus someone else that comes to me with something that I don't even see, but yet they don't engage anally because they know it's there.
Yeah.
Those are the things that you have to look internally and say, hey, if I'm not engaging anally, but I would love to because of X, Y, and Z, there are tons of solutions that are out there to
Mm.
support that. And it
Yep.
shouldn't be dismissive from a physician that I see over and over, which is to say, oh, why do you care how it looks? Or, oh, so then just don't have sex. I mean, how many people I've seen a second, third, fourth opinions from major institutions around the world with those kind of homophobic or just anal phobic, let's say,
Mm.
because it doesn't have to be in the gay space, just that aspect of just limited sexual knowledge and how important that is to people. It's actually, it should be malpractice.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think what sort of one of the switches that the book sort of flicked for me, I think, was a nice part where you're talking about, I guess other erogenous zones,
Yeah.
in the body. So, this deck of cards that we're given as humans, sexual beings to play with, right? Fingertips, earlobes, lips, and everything else, all these other stuff. And yeah, why? We've got this. Everything's multifunctional. You know, breasts, penises, balls, your butt, your ears,
Even your ears.
fingers.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The
Yeah.
whole thing, right? Why does the butt get the stigma? Why does that, like, that's not a sexual thing, like, but and how are the sort of, I guess, is it ingrained cultural stuff? Is it some of that ignorance, or the homophobia, that stuff that puts people off just having that in their sexual repertoire? I mean, I guess there's some people that aren't actually into it, but I mean, it's, there
Yeah,
are a
but
lot of
how do you
people.
know? How do you know what you don't know, right?
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like I tell a lot of especially someone now. It's like you're so judgmental about things you've never tried. It's
Mm.
same thing with food, where it's like
Yeah.
everyone's like, "Oh no, I don't like that." Well, have you ever tried it? No. How would you know?
Yeah.
But I think it's because we poop out that hole that it becomes a huge issue. And if you look at the way dogs poop, and they poop so perfectly they don't even need to actually wipe. When you look at Western diets and you look at the kind of the more modern day diet, it's not enough fiber, it's not enough vegetables, it's too many fats, carbs. And so what winds up happening is that people are afraid. One, it's dirty. Am I
Mm.
going to shit on somebody? What are the dynamics as it relates to that? It's the final sexual frontier.
Mm.
And again, you're right, religious beliefs, all of that, cultural, societal, even our own, right? When you look back clearly at the Roman days and even that, everything was for the taking.
Yeah, man.
Everything was for the taking. It was all defined as a pleasure
Yeah.
act. Now, with that said, I think again, it's like, how do you use diet? How do you use supplementations? How do you start to do toy work if you want to get into anal play in a safe way so that you can dispel all the myths of your own? That's why I'm
Mm.
such a huge advocate for self play. If someone comes to the office and they're like, I've never engaged in anal sex, I want to, how do I do it?
Mm.
It's about a 6 to 8 week course of using toys on your own.
Mm.
And through, but seriously, from the book, from our brand Future Method and what we do with Bespoke, we have the protocol to use specific dilators. And what you're doing in that is you're really starting to understand your own anatomy. Those three muscles we spoke about, you're understanding the skin, you're understanding your neural makeup, you're understanding if you feel pleasure. Does it titillate you? Do you get hard? Do you get wet? What are the things that allow you into that space to figure out, like, hey, is this for me or is it not? There are people that are completely wired to want to take it up the ass.
Mm.
And then there are people that are like, oh, well, I don't really know. Maybe, maybe not. And then there are these hard no's, even though the reality is that that's probably a lot of internalized, hey, am I a homo if I take it up the ass,
Yeah.
right? Or even finger or external play. But the key component is by doing self exploration and by understanding that you can't go from nothing to something big, that it's small for 2 weeks, then it's small into medium, and it's not a lot of work. It's 2 to 3 times a week, just when you're showering, doing some toy work in and out past the first couple of sets of muscles, then past the third muscle, so that you're able to start getting all the muscles and the skin to slowly expand and toughen. And
Mm.
you start to see, always starting with the small toy, you go from small into medium, and then from small, medium into large, and then you go into kind of basic sexual components. And we break in the book sexual positions by different peaches. One peach is very simple techniques, two is obviously more advanced, and three is more from there. And again, it's like, is doggy style a great position to start with? No. Why?
Mm.
You're not facing me. You're not, I can't see if you're in pain. You have to lose control for the most part to be in that position. So a lot of this is through the toy work, is for people to really start to put away all of those myths. There's not shit that sits up there.
Yeah.
It's not dirty if I'm pooping correctly and doing fiber and pre and probiotics. It does lubricate well with the toy work and the lube that I'm using. I'm able to expand and feel pleasure and comfort. And again, you start to kind of narrow that down. And I think in the book, we go really over really well a lot of those taboos and myths and the questions you need to ask yourself and again, this book is not only for bottoms, it's for if I'm a giver and you're a top, how do you make sure that you're engaging with all orifices correctly. Again, having the sexual knowledge and the education of how the ass opens, how you're able to open your partner's hole correctly and minimize, it should be standard for everybody,
Mm.
even practitioners, to start thinking about the way they deliver care differently.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting the communication. I mean, this 101 stuff that was interesting to me, But yeah, it's not all on the bottom, right? To
Totally.
present this beautiful art, to know everything, to be ready, to be relaxed, all this kind of stuff. It's like anything. It's like any sexual back and forth. Like, yeah, there's more than one person involved.
And I think also when you think of, the beginnings of sex, first of all, in any sex is never great, right? Especially with new partners, you're trying to navigate and figure and what works. Obviously, we're
Yeah,
all terrible with sexual communication during, before, and after. There
yeah,
should be like a play-by-play after so that you're able to say, did you feel good with that? Was it not? Can I change the way my position is, right? But none of us do that, right?
yeah.
But again, when you look at that, in the beginning, it may feel medical, our approach, because it is,
Mm,
right? And a lot of the pleasure side needs to say, okay, I first need to get it primed before
mm,
I could actually understand the pleasure side. And then you slowly start to lose those inhibitions, which then starts to make sex really fun and really pleasurable. And
yeah.
and for some people, there are three types of bottoms, three types that we've learned in the office. And we do a specific test which measures the pressures anally of the muscles. Men have clearly significant muscle in that space. Women, the muscle is much less because of childbirth and child
Mm,
rearing, where they need more elasticity. So, what type of muscle architecture and what type of function does somebody have? So, there's a third of people in the world that can open their ass and take whatever, whenever, and be completely comfortable with that.
mm,
That's a third. Two-thirds can't. And of those two-thirds, half of the two-thirds can learn with sexual education, toys, understanding anatomy, and can do things on their own.
mm.
The other half needs some augmentation, whether it's anal Botox, whether it's physical therapy, whether it's surgery if someone has a fissure, a tear, or extra skin or a hemorrhoid. And so it just gives our listeners kind of like the understanding of like, well, the whole point of the book and toys and self-exploration is which type of bottom are you?
Yeah.
Because many people can't come and see me in the office. So it kind of behooves them to be like, okay, how do I understand who I am? And then now knowing that, what are the things that I can do to allow the success to happen?
Mm. No, I think it's what I sort of the takeaway of that process of, I guess, the self exploration. Like you said, there's not only different types of people, different types of butts to understand and work out what you've got, but there is also the history. There's a relationship between every person and their butthole, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff that might need to be undone. Maybe you need to fall in love with your butt again. Whether can we talk about the bogus
Yeah,
assumptions? Can we
sure,
blast through those? They were really good, and I
sure.
think they they spoke to me a bit because I'm really interested in sort of how we got here,
Yeah,
and I think, I mean, misinformation by peers is a huge one, but also, yeah, completely inadequate sex ed, grotesque, politicization of, these subjects and adjacent subjects, awful laws, like we sort of talked about, grounded in complete bigotry. But yeah, let's hit some of those. Let's hit your five bogus assumptions out of the book. Would that be good?
okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, so
So
name them off. What's the assumptions that we're looking more at?
the that I think that was it the prevalence of anal sex is that it's not just in the gay community, right? That was one of
No.
them. No.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the gay community is huge.
Yeah.
There's, especially depends on which cities you're at.
Yeah.
There's more bottoms to tops and certain cities to go to if you're visiting because you're preferred versus
Yeah.
others. But you start to see it a lot more. I mean, you look at now up to 50% of even the hetero space has attempted anal sex and or is engaging anally. And
Yeah.
it's all more so on the rise. I think when you're looking at a lot of the Gen Z and like the younger generations, it's a lot more fluid, a
Mm.
lot more of sexual exploration is anything goes, and let's just do it safely and comfortably and research it to
Yeah.
the point where you're able to evaluate that. I think again, it's like, every bottom must be submissive. Every bottom wants to be taken. So many people say to me, "Oh, Evan, how can you be gay? You're so bro." And it's like, well, define all of that. Like we're
Yeah.
we're under the assumption that if you're gay, you have to be a queen. If you're gay, you have to be a bottom. And if you're a bottom, you need to be totally submissive and wanting to be taken. Now,
Mm.
every one of us, hetero and this, there are times we want to be coddled, and then there are times we want to pound, right? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
innately in who we are as human beings. So I think, again, a lot of that is looking at all of that and just questioning it and saying to ourselves, well, what is that actually rooted in? What is that actually based in? And the
Mm.
reality is it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. And
Yeah.
yet, because we're all fed that through all of this, there are many people that still want to engage anally, but yet can't get themselves into that space. There's so many times that I see people coming to my office that would define themselves as tops, not bottoms. And you say, are you a top because you've tried anal and it's not your thing? Or are you a top because anal is painful, it's irritating, there's lots. And 90% of them would say, if it wasn't painful, I would love to engage anally.
Mm.
And you start to say, well, wait a second, how many people that are out there in this world don't reach their sexual desires because they don't know it exists, they don't have access to this type of care or education. And these are the things that I'm so happy that you're talking about because it goes to the masses for people to start questioning
Mm.
and then start looking at those assumptions, taking them out of the equation, and then saying, okay, this is potentially important to me or my partner. Many partners want to engage anally, but yet the heteronormative world is like, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, I always say that partner, if the desire is there, is going to find that
Mm.
somewhere, whether it's in an open space, whether it's not in an open space, and it should be. There's so many things. I say if you take away dick and ass to a bottom, it is catastrophic.
Mm.
And the top is going to find the bottom. There's lots of components to relate to that. So I think it's great that we're just actually having the conversation.
Yeah. That's kind of you need the space to talk about these things because they can be so harmful when they're you know appropriated by people who are just trying to get some vote or
That's right.
otherize someone else
And
or
and and
yeah.
especially in my country and yours, they're all taking it up the ass, all of
Oh.
them. It's
Yeah.
like and they're so dismissive and so one-sided. But the
Yeah.
reality is that I'm seeing them in the office.
Yeah.
So let me tell you something. So it's just a matter of again, everybody's personal space, everybody's whole is their own.
Mm.
How do you define that? What you want? Life is too short to question other people's approaches towards the negativity as it relates to this. And you have to just work on you. And, again, people that are going to find the book, people that are finding the podcast, people that are, they're innately curious
Mm.
to say, or they tickled in their mind to be like, either I want something anally or my partner does. And how do we start to do it the correct way? And
Yeah.
that's instrumental. And it gets me up every day in the morning to work and do all these things because it's so impactful for communities. It's such a positive when you start to see people able to engage the way that they want to, and they're so in that.
Mm.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think the one of the other of the bogus assumptions is obviously, you know, And I think it plays out in that bigoted space, and you see it a lot, particularly historically, when people are kind of saying that it's so dirty and it's so, sinful, and all that kind of language. And yeah, one of your bogus assumptions is that, if I take it up the arse, I'm just going to walk around shitting myself.
Yes.
There's just going to be shit everywhere. My life's just going to be, shit on the sheet, shit on my dick, shit all over the place. And so that was an interesting one. I think probably just because of the basics of like anal anatomy, which obviously you're, super clued up on. Like, it's just not the case, right? That shit.
It's not the case. I mean, I think there's two approaches to that, right? People feel as if, one, that the shit is going to be an issue. Yeah. Two is that if I take it up the ass, I'm going to be too loose and then I will shit all over the place. So I think there's a couple of assumptions in that. First, let's tackle just poop in general, right? If you're shitting correctly, if it's high fiber, good protein diet, you're going to the restroom and it's regular, the area that we are engaging in anal sex is actually clear of stool. Stool is much higher in what's called the sigmoid colon. Now, the reason why we try to poop in the morning, one, obviously because we're going to work and all this other stuff, but when you stand up, you're changing the pelvic angle. So what happens is the stool moves into the anal cavity. It hits that third muscle that we spoke about and tells the third muscle, I'm ready to go. You sense that you need to go to the bathroom. You relax the other two muscles that you're able to, and then you go to the bathroom when it's applicable, right? If you're following that and you're doing that, the reality is once that stool is gone, the area that's called a conduit, the anal conduit, is empty. Now, yes, there are definitely times, I don't know if you eating certain types of foods or spicy foods where we have issues. Yeah, that may not be an opportune time to take it up the ass, but you can start to learn what foods work for you, what timing works for you, and how. And I say to people, when you're doing the toy work, the pre-dilating, don't douche or clean out. Don't do anything. Show yourself. There are glass toys that we really like. With the brand Future Method, we came up with specific for the anal anatomy. But with that being said, you take the toy out and you could see, is there stool, is there not? 9 times out of 10, it will be clean. Now, people are going to douche. Douching is using a liquid solution inside to clean and get better. For larger toys, fisting, big play, whatever, I get it. We came up with a solution that's not as toxic as water or enemas. Again, back to the microbiome with the wet wipes. Very similar concept with water-based lubes or water or enemas to clean out. It basically creates a rawness in the space. So it basically predisposes you to STDs, infections, or other issues. So the key is, if you're shitting correctly, good fiber, pre and probiotics, you should be able to douche less. If you're douching less or you're using the right solutions, there shouldn't be a change in the microbiome, so that now when you have sex, it's compatible, you feel sexy, you're able to do what you need to. So from a shitting perspective, I think it's first just people understanding the right ways to poop, regardless of sex. Then it's trying to say, okay, if I'm in a good groove and I'm shitting correctly, now sex becomes less of what people would think of as a dirty aspect, right? And then getting into like, if I'm getting fucked all the time, am I going to get loose? So first off, I see people take the hugest things, okay, and they are not shitting on the street, especially the male pelvis. We have so much muscle there. And most people, because we're sedentary, we're on Zooms all day, we're sitting, we're working out, you've overcompensated with way too much muscle in that space. So that was like, even with the straight guys that never want dick in their ass, using toys just for pooping and for life actually helps the pelvic floor, helps the prostate, helps all of those aspects. So now, women, we spoke of, has less muscle. So there's definitely men that come to me where their muscle's too tight and we dilate and we do anal Botox. to relax that third muscle. In women, I don't do as much Botox because their muscles are able to relax. Their issues are more skin
Mm.
because the skin is so perfect, it's thin and it
Right.
can tear quite easily. So we do a lot of different work. So again, it's like every asshole is anatomically the same, but functionally and depending upon the sexes and all of that, there are nuances that unless you understand the sexual space,
Yeah.
you can't understand the right ways to treat that.
Let's just, you took my interest there with anal Botox. What
Yeah,
does
so
that
let's
do?
talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when we spoke of before the three different types of bottoms, the two-thirds that weren't able to get to where they need to, a lot of it was the muscle, and the muscle was not allowing that relaxation. So it's kind of like I'm trying to enter you, you say you're relaxed, I can't get my dick in,
Mm.
or I can't get the toy in. And you're like, well, why is that? Well, that third muscle is restricting that. So the question is, can you, with toys, through glass dilators and cone, can you train that muscle to get more elastic? So think of like if you get like a catalog, a big thick catalog or magazines that has that thick rubber band around it.
Yeah.
That rubber band is sometimes hard to actually get off of it because it's so tight. But if every day you start to kind of stretch it, it'll loosen and go from being too tight into a normal range. But there are some people that the second they start to use toys, their muscles clamps even further. They're
Mm.
restricted, whether it's here or there, it doesn't matter. That's where anal Botox comes into play. It basically diminishes the pressure by 15 millimeters of mercury. And what that does is it takes away that reflex of clamp down and it takes the toy work. Now, with that relaxation, you're actually able to stretch the muscle so that most people don't need it forever. Most people do 2 to 3 rounds of anal Botox. It lasts for 3 to 4 months. It's an in-office procedure. And what it does is it starts to fully work in a week. You're not going to shit on the street. You have too much muscle to do that. You may have a little bit more gas the first couple of weeks just till your body gets used to it.
Yeah.
But what it does is it sets the success up. So I break up what I do in the office into 3 buckets. First bucket is, can you do things on your own? Second bucket is adding anal Botox or physical therapy in the office. Third bucket is, do I need to do surgery? Because there are many people that have a fissure, which is a tear, or have hemorrhoids that actually block the space.
Mm.
Or when you're trying to do toy work, it splits the skin constantly, where no matter what you do, no matter what Botox, no matter what toy work you do, until I set the stage for success surgically, you can't get yourself there. And so is it a muscular issue? Is it a skin issue? Is it a scar issue? Is it a neuro issue? Or is it a combination of all of those things? So sometimes people come to me where we say, okay, let's just start with the easy stuff first. Let's do Botox, physical therapy, and toys and
Mm.
see how we're doing. From that, I'm able to start to understand muscle, skin, all of these ramifications of that. And then what the theory is that, and it works quite well with the patients I see, is that after 2 or 3 rounds of the Botox, you're already successfully dilating and having sex, that when the Botox wears off, you're still elastic with that rubber band.
Mm.
It's all about pressures and understanding that.
That's very interesting. Yeah, amazing the uses of Botox actually. But the one question I was going to ask you was, I suppose the people that come to you, do you find there's a delay in what people are think they're sort of what people are comfortable to live with for a certain amount of time until it crosses a line, and then they're like, I'm going to go sort this out. So like if you bust your collarbone playing rugby or blow up your knee playing tennis, like you're going to go and get that sorted out like pretty pronto. But is there, and why do you think there is, a sort of delay in coming to see you to address any of the stuff that you sort of talked about?
I think there's definitely two camps of people, right? There's a camp that's like, this is really important to me, and it's going on for a little bit longer than my comfort zone, and I'm
Yeah,
going in. And then there's the majority of people that are like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to go in because I'm bleeding out my ass for like 10 years. It's not stopping. And they
yeah,
finally have come up to say, we need help. And it's even in my own, like I remember when I first had a fissure, I was months and months and months of being like, all right, it'll go away, or let's leave it alone. And then you start to develop these chronic issues where you just learn to live with it.
mm,
But when you finally, I mean, I see so many people after we fix it that they're like, fuck, I should have just done this 10 years ago. I can't believe I like, now I can actually shit and feel pleasure in
yeah,
just pooping, let alone bleeding and pain. It's
yeah,
all about stigma, and it's all about the taboos, and even our own. We're our worst enemies. It's in
yeah,
anything. I mean, especially medically, even doctors are the worst at it. They're just like, no way, I'm not going to deal with that.
yeah,
But I think that that's what this is so important about, especially with the book and what you're doing is like normalizing that conversation and having people understand that there are places that get it.
mm,
Before people come to the office, they know that we're a safe space. They know that there's no off limits with taboos and or tackling sex and also sexual desires. Plenty of people have kinks. Who am I to say? I may not stick a wooden spatula up my ass, but I have a couple of clients that do and love it.
yeah,
And you say, okay, great, let's figure out how to do it as safely as possible,
yeah,
right? And so there's no off limits for where we are, but the world is not there,
mm,
and you know that. I mean, you see that from country to country, from state to state, from religion to religion, from society to society. It is just, and in a lot of places, it's going the wrong way,
big
right?
time. Yeah,
Like, why shouldn't everybody get the best possible life that they want, and their definition of the best possible life be the one that is the most important, right?
yeah,
It's not my preconceived notions. Who am I, right?
yeah,
But that's like, unfortunately, a different society than what we're living now. But I hope that this book and what we're talking about just makes people think differently. You don't need to take it up the ass, but you need to respect people that are and understand the ramifications when there's a discrepancy because it matters. And I say to
mm,
people, some people say, oh, I just don't get it. I said, okay. And then say to a female, I said, let's just say I were to have to stitch up your vagina and you can never have anal sex. You can never have vaginal sex again. They're like, that would be catastrophic. I said, yeah, that is for a lot of people that use their ass in the same capacity.
mm,
Why aren't we talking and or have access to that type of care?
yeah.
So that's kind of the the really the ramifications of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's great. I think as a educational resource, as a sort of proof that or for people that are in any doubt that there aren't people out there that have their back and have their best interests. You know what I mean? I
And
think
I
it's
see 95 people a week.
yeah,
I do 10 to 15 surgeries a week.
yeah,
There is a lot of anal issues associated with just normal life of
mm,
shitting into sex and all of this.
yeah,
And lots of it can be fixed by understanding and reading and looking at the book or some components to educate people. And
yeah,
then again, as parents teaching our kids open dialogue, communication, how do you start early so
mm,
that now, instead of people looking to porn, thinking that choking is the right way to engage the first way, or just
yeah,
shoving it in
yeah,
anally and
yeah,
thinking that that's going to happen,
yeah.
again, how do we mentor and do all the right things?
Yeah, totally. Well, the title of the porn video says anal
Yeah,
virginity busted
totally.
by, it's like, oh, crikey, come on. Yeah. No, I hear you, and I think that's right. I think education, yeah, like we might have not had the best, most comprehensive education and stuff like that, but we can definitely do better. for each other and for our kids and everything
And
else.
also the physicians, I really think that this is a huge book of like just thinking differently. Nobody asks, I'm not asking the physicians or the surgeons to treat this and or understand it in a capacity, but they need to know that this is an issue.
Mm,
They need to know that who does take care of it. They
mm,
need to bring it into their practice to ask the right questions. And if they don't feel comfortable, find somebody that does. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know anything about this, but this is a good resource or this is the right way. How do
yeah.
we then create medical schools that put this into curriculums? How do we start kind of really bringing all of this into all spaces so
Mm.
that we can actually just be real and have honest conversations? And people should have access to this type of care globally.
Oh, massively, yeah. And I think there's so many precedents in history where you're absolutely right. Things like in medical care, for instance, stuff has been left out because it's a bit taboo or because it's, it doesn't really, you know, like the clitoris, for instance,
Yeah,
and the massive anatomy that was, there's been horrendous operations and stuff like that taking place because people just didn't have the right knowledge about what they're doing down there. So like,
totally. And I
yeah,
think it's a huge, game changer. I think one thing we didn't talk about is the prostate versus the A zone. Especially in women, finding the anal zone is so important with anal
mm,
sex because many women can't get off completely or multiple times can't get to where they want to with vaginal penetration. But
yep,
anal, it's a different angle. It can hit what's called the posterior clitoris or the space where the prostate would be in a male is
yep,
still the same nerve endings. And you could hit the cervix, you could hit the vagina, you could hit in a different way that stimulates and creates that much more powerful orgasms.
yep,
Same thing in the straight hetero world that they don't want anyone to touch the anus. But when you learn prostate massage and prostate play, that orgasm is just that much greater than what anyone has ever had. So if you have these taboos and stigmas and you work on those preconceived understandings and squash them,
yeah.
you can actually start to enhance your sexual play by understanding the anal anatomy, these approaches, and the different zones that are there from a pleasure perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God. Well, like there's a whole podcast in there just about like straight
That's right.
straight relationships and how you can involve your ass, I guess. All these
That's
things you
next
can do.
time. Next time.
That's next time. Amazing. Hey, dude, thanks heaps for coming on and chatting to us. Enjoy your evening, but like great work. Absolutely. Like
Oh, I
it's
appreciate it.
really, really good. I'm super happy that I'm still got the end of the book to go, but yeah, I think that what it's done personally and what it's doing and what it can do for everybody else is really important actually. So
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on.
thank you very much indeed. Really hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to leave us a like, follow, comment, or review wherever you're tuning in from. Your support means the world to us. Till next time, safe travels. See you on the next episode.